In the quiet before chaos, there exists a name whispered in locker rooms, avoided in interviews, and feared behind forced smiles. A storm that doesn't need thunder to announce itself, because by the time you hear it, it's already too late. This isn't the rise of a fighter. This is the arrival of a reckoning. Ilia Topuria didn't come to play the game. He came to burn the board. No shortcuts, no mercy. Just pure, relentless dominance forged in silence. While the world fixated on hype trains and marketing stars, Ilia sharpened himself in the dark, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when he did, the MMA world didn't just feel it, they shattered. This is not just a story. This is not just a fighter. This is a warning. Because once you step into his world, there is no coming back. You don't face Ilia Topuria, you survive him. If you're lucky, Ilia Topuria was never meant to be ordinary. Born to clash with the world, he emerged not from comfort, but chaos. Spain didn't raise him. He raised himself in Spain, molded by hardship and sharpened in the silence of the overlooked. While others played, he bled. While others slept, he burned. The streets didn't break him, they baptized him. From day one, he was hunted by doubt, hunted by poverty, hunted by the world telling him, "You don't belong here." But Topuria wasn't here to belong. He was here to conquer. Behind those cold eyes was a fire few could face, and deep inside his calm, a storm raged that no one could survive. Before he entered the cage, he'd already fought 1,000 unseen wars. The UFC would become his battlefield, but his spirit was a weapon forged long before fame. Each punch he threw wasn't just a strike, it was vengeance for every ignored moment, every dismissed dream, every scar left by survival. He didn't rise through rankings, he ripped through them. They called him cocky, arrogant, delusional. But those were the words of men who'd never seen a hurricane wear gloves. His aura wasn't confidence, it was prophecy. Every step he took toward that octagon echoed like a war drum. And those who stood across from him felt it. Not the fear of defeat, but the fear of total erasure. Because when Ilia Topuria fights, history doesn't whisper, it screams. They didn't see it coming. The world blinked, and Topuria was already there. Inside the cage, inside the mind of his prey. Like a ghost wearing gloves, he moved without doubt, struck without fear. Analysts scrambled to decode him. Coaches couldn't prepare for him. And opponents? They prayed the cameras wouldn't catch their hesitation. His rise wasn't a climb, it was a detonation. Each fight wasn't about winning, it was about rewriting the rules of dominance. His ground game felt like drowning in steel. His striking, a sniper's poetry and violence. But what made him truly lethal wasn't skill. It was the silence before the storm, the eerie calm before he exploded. He didn't just fight to win, he fought to erase the future of anyone who dared stand in front of him. Ilia wasn't chasing greatness, he was dragging it into the light, kicking and screaming. The audience didn't watch his fights, they survived them. And with each finish, a message was carved into the division's bones. There are levels to this, and Topuria is the floor above nightmares. He didn't knock on the doors of champions, he tore the walls down. And as his record stayed perfect, one truth grew louder. This wasn't hype, this was a reckoning. The moment his name was announced, something shifted. Not in the arena, but in the atmosphere. It wasn't noise, it was a tension that choked the air. Like a predator being released into a zoo of prey, Ilia didn't walk to the cage. He stalked toward it. Each step dragged the weight of unfinished wars, unspoken vengeance. His opponents felt it. Their smiles melted. Their swagger turned hollow. They weren't facing a man. They were facing consequence. Because when Topuria locks eyes, the bravado dies. His stare is surgical, cold, calculating, like he's already seen how it ends. And most times he has. His fight IQ isn't learned. It's primal. It's the instinct of someone who had to fight before he could even spell strategy. Every movement is precise rage. His defense, bulletproof. His counters, designed to punish. But his most dangerous weapon? Patience. He waits, reads, studies, and then unleashes hell. And once he smells fear, it's over. The way a lion knows the moment its prey breaks, there are no second chances with Topuria. Just warnings, and then silence. Every warrior has a moment where destiny stares back. For Topuria, it wasn't a title fight. It was every second he breathed. His career was never about belts. It was about becoming undeniable. And yet, even as he shredded opponents, the doubt crept in. Pundits questioned him. Fans labeled him unproven. But Ilia smiled, not because they were wrong, but because he knew the storm hadn't even started. He trained in silence, obsessed, calculated, improved. And when he returned, he wasn't just better, he was reborn. Faster, sharper, meaner. His striking turned venomous. His takedowns, absolute. He started breaking spirits, not just bodies. The octagon became a graveyard for hype trains, a stage where illusions were buried under his fists. And through it all, he said little. No trash talk, no theatrics, just precision violence. Fighters began pulling out. Managers stopped answering calls. Because everyone knew, once you sign the contract with Ilia Topuria, you're not stepping into a fight. You're walking into a storm that doesn't pass. A reckoning you can't dodge. The Leviathan was awake, and it was hungry. The UFC tried to tame him, put him on prelims, bury him under bigger names, delay the inevitable. But storms don't wait for permission. Ilia kept winning, and with every win, the silence around his name grew louder. It wasn't hype anymore. It was fear. The kind that seeps into gyms, makes coaches hesitant, makes fighters look the other way when his name's mentioned. And when the spotlight finally hit him, he didn't blink. He devoured it. In his breakthrough fight, the world expected a war. What they got was a massacre. He didn't just dominate, he dismantled. The crowd roared, but Ilia didn't smile. No celebration, just cold eyes scanning the wreckage he'd created. That's when everyone realized, this isn't a contender. This is a curse wrapped in talent. The rankings couldn't contain him. The hype couldn't catch him. The division couldn't stop him. He wasn't just climbing, he was consuming. And now, with blood on his gloves and destiny in his crosshairs, Ilia Topuria wasn't asking for respect anymore. He was coming to take it, piece by piece, fighter by fighter, until no one could say his name without trembling. Opponents tried to solve him like a puzzle. They studied tape, built blueprints, trained in silence. But when the cage door shut, all plans shattered. Because Ilia isn't a style, he's a force. You don't outpoint a hurricane, you survive it if you're lucky, and most weren't. One by one, they folded. Wrestlers got ragdolled, strikers got silenced, veterans looked like amateurs. Ilia's control wasn't just physical, it was psychological. He didn't just beat you, he made you question if you belonged in the sport. Some fighters lose and bounce back. But after Topuria, many never returned the same. Something about facing him changes people. It wasn't just the punishment, it was the hopelessness. Like being trapped in a nightmare you can't wake up from. Round after round, he broke rhythm, shattered timing, and turned reactions into regrets. And through all this, Ilia's eyes stayed the same. Stone cold, emotionless, as if possessed by a mission written in fire long before the cameras turned on. He wasn't chasing history. He was history in the making, and the world had no choice but to watch or fall. Behind every champion is a journey. But Ilia's was a battlefield paved with silence, sacrifice, and scars no one sees. He didn't have privilege, sponsors, or a country that rallied behind him. He had grit, he had hunger, and he had rage, an unspoken fury aimed at every door that was ever slammed in his face. While others posted training clips, Ilia buried himself in grind. No filters, no flex, just war. Every mile he ran, every blow he absorbed, every cut he stitched himself, it all became part of the weapon. So when he entered the UFC spotlight, he wasn't a fighter chasing fame. He was a phantom, forged in isolation, ready to haunt anyone wearing gloves. Reporters tried to frame him as just another prospect. But prospects don't walk through veterans like shadows. Prospects don't look bored while destroying careers. Ilia did, because he didn't care about narratives. He cared about annihilation. Every time his fists landed, it was a scream for the life he clawed out of darkness. And with each win, he wasn't just moving up the ranks, he was building a throne from broken bones. There's a rare kind of silence before disaster, right before lightning hits, right before a predator lunges. That's the silence Topuria carries into every arena, a storm bottled inside a man. His walkouts feel like rituals, not routines. The lights dim, but his aura brightens. You don't just watch him, you feel him. Fans scream, but under that noise there's a hush, a collective breath held as if everyone knows. Something irreversible is about to happen. The cage becomes a chamber. And when the door locks, Ilia changes. No more calm, no more restraint, just fury in motion. He doesn't dance, he hunts, he corners. He cuts angles like he's drawing kill zones. And the moment his opponent flinches, it's over. Not because of the strike, but because Topuria knows. He senses weakness like blood in water. His combinations don't stop. They cascade, drowning his foe in chaos. And when the referee dives in, it's not to stop a fight, it's to save a life. But by then, it's already too late. They said he hadn't faced a real test, that his resume was padded, that the hype train would crash when it hit a real wall. But what they didn't know, Ilia Topuria doesn't hit walls. He breaks through them. When they finally gave him a ranked opponent, the doubters leaned in, hoping to witness his collapse. Instead, they watched a man dissect another elite fighter with surgical brutality. No wasted motion, no nerves, just cold execution. The higher the stakes, the colder he became. He didn't just win, he exposed. The opponent left with more questions than bruises, not about strategy, but about how to ever recover from that kind of domination. And Topuria, he walked away untouched, unbothered, unbreakable. That night, the MMA world stopped laughing. The memes stopped. The critics fell silent. Because they all saw the truth. This wasn't hype. It was horror wearing hand wraps. And it was coming for everyone. By now, the roster knew. There was no blueprint, no stylistic edge. No, if I can just survive the first round. With Topuria, every round is a first round. Every second is a threat. Champions began whispering his name with caution. Contenders pretended they didn't see the rankings. Even the UFC masters of hype started treading carefully. Because Ilia wasn't a star they could control, he was a force they had to brace for. He didn't chase clout, he chased legacies. And with every performance, he carved his initials into the sport's foundation. He wasn't just winning, he was creating doubt in men who once believed they were untouchable. Training camps started revolving around the possibility of facing him. Entire teams studied his footage like decoding ancient warfare. But it never mattered, because Ilia's next fight was always different, always evolved. And that's what terrified them most. He didn't just fight, he adapted. And there is nothing more dangerous than a killer who keeps learning. There's a look fighters get when they realize they're not going to win. It's subtle, just a flicker in the eyes, a small collapse of hope. And Ilia lives for that moment. He doesn't rush toward it. He pulls it out of them, piece by painful piece. His pressure isn't frantic, it's methodical. He gives you space just to take it back. He lets you breathe just to choke the breath out moments later. The octagon becomes smaller with every step he takes. And once he has you cornered, it's not about speed, it's about inevitability. The shots land cleaner. The guard starts dropping. Panic replaces pride. By the time the final punch lands, it's mercy. Because Ilia doesn't just beat you in the cage, he invades your mind for the rest of your career. You don't recover from a Topuria fight, you carry it with you. In your stance, in your timing, in your nightmares. He's not just another name in your record, he's a ghost in your shadow. When Ilia speaks, it's not loud, but it's final. There's no showmanship, no circus, just declarations, promises made in a deadpan tone that somehow shake the world louder than any scream. And what's worse, he always delivers. Every name he calls, every prediction he makes, it happens. He doesn't manifest victories, he engineers them, step by brutal step. It's as if he sees the fight in slow motion before it ever begins. Coaches can't prepare their fighters for that. Because how do you prepare for a man who doesn't just train harder? He thinks deeper. His confidence doesn't come from delusion. It comes from data, from war-tested preparation, from scars earned in places no camera followed. When he promises destruction, it's not a threat, it's a forecast, and it always arrives. Not because he's cocky, but because he's certain. The difference? Cocky fighters hope the world believes in them. Ilia doesn't care. He already knows what's coming. And once you hear him speak, deep down, you know too. It wasn't just what Ilia did inside the cage. It was the silence he left behind. After every victory, there was no chaos, no wild call-outs, no celebration that echoed through arenas. Just aftermath, the kind that lingers, the kind that makes other fighters sit in quiet rooms, staring at their gloves, wondering if they still have what it takes. Because Ilia doesn't just take wins, he takes belief. He strips his opponents down to something raw, something primal. In his presence, confidence becomes a fragile thing. Fighters who once strutted through weigh-ins with ego now shuffle past him with eyes lowered. Commentators who once dismissed him now speak in cautious tones, choosing words like survivors recounting a storm. But Ilia doesn't feed off their praise. He ignores it. Because the mission was never to be famous. The mission was to be feared, to haunt divisions, to make entire weight classes rethink their future. And he's done it, slowly, relentlessly, without compromise. His brand is violence, his currency is pain. And every step he takes toward the title, the silence grows louder. Because deep down, they all know, the belt isn't just in danger, it's already his. By now, the division was no longer strategizing how to beat him. They were surviving around him. Fighters began delaying fights. Managers played matchmaking politics. Even the most outspoken contenders started backpedaling, inventing narratives to avoid his name. And Ilia? He watched it all in silence, knowing exactly what was happening. They weren't avoiding a bad matchup. They were dodging extinction. Because stepping into the cage with him wasn't just a risk to rankings, it was a risk to identity. Ilia wasn't just rising through the ranks, he was rewriting them. For every veteran who once owned the spotlight, there was now a shadow following them, Topuria shaped and growing. No amount of experience could solve his timing. No reach advantage could match his aggression. No belt could shield you from the kind of violence he brings. And with every call-out ignored, his legend grew. Because the most dangerous fighters aren't the ones everyone's calling out. They're the ones no one wants to face. The ones the UFC has to force into title shots because the division would rather run than stand. And Ilia was now that man, a silent wrecking force with gold in sight, and no one left brave enough to try and stop him. There's a myth that surrounds certain fighters, a legend not built by PR teams, but by fear, silence, and scars left on opponents who refuse to speak about what really happened in there. Ilia Topuria became that myth, not because he asked for it, but because no one could explain him. Analysts tried. They dissected his tape, broke down his combinations, theorized game plans. But when the fight came, all logic died in real time. He moved too fast to track, too smart to trap. He wasn't just stronger, he was several steps ahead, seeing openings that hadn't even appeared yet. Opponents trained for months, only to unravel in minutes. They blamed nerves, they blamed camp. But truth hung heavy in their eyes. They were outclassed by something they couldn't understand. It's one thing to lose to a better athlete. It's another to feel like you were never meant to win. And that's what Ilia delivers. Inevitability. Not just defeat, but destiny. A crushing sense that this was always going to happen. That stepping into the cage with him was like stepping into a prophecy carved in stone. You can't rewrite it. You can only endure it if you're lucky. The title picture was no longer a conversation. It was a countdown. Topuria wasn't chasing it anymore. It was coming to him. Champions were no longer kings, they were targets. And the closer Ilia got, the more the world realized. This wasn't a contender's run. This was a hostile takeover. The belt wasn't a dream for him. It was a debt, owed after years of being overlooked, doubted, dismissed. And now payment was due. The media couldn't ignore him. The fans couldn't stop chanting. Even Dana White knew. This wasn't a marketing project. It was a mauling waiting to happen. And the champ, he could pretend to be unbothered, But every interview cracked his mask a little more. Because how do you prepare for a man who's never blinked, never panicked, never failed? Ilia didn't just win fights, he left no blueprint behind. Every challenger came with hope and left with silence. And now the belt was next. Not to decorate him, but to finally match what the world already knew. He wasn't the future of the division, he was the final boss. The night of the title fight didn't feel like an event, it felt like an execution. The crowd was electric, but beneath the roar was tension, sharp and suffocating. Everyone knew what was coming. The defending champ walked out with swagger, but behind his eyes, doubt. He wasn't walking toward a challenger. He was walking toward a reckoning. The cage locked and the atmosphere shifted. No more lights, no more noise, just two men and one storm. Ilia didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He advanced like a force of nature, with the calm of a man who'd already seen this ending. From the first exchange, it was clear. There were levels to this, and the champ had just entered the deep end. Every shot Ilia landed wasn't just powerful, it was personal. He wasn't trying to win rounds. He was trying to erase doubt, to silence an era, to tear the crown from a head that never truly deserved it. And with every second, that crown slipped lower. The champ swung, missed, panicked. The crowd felt the shift, hope crumbling, history cracking. And Topuria, he was just getting started. Then came the moment, not a lucky punch, not a wild exchange, just precision manifesting into legacy. Ilia feinted, stepped in, and detonated a right hand so clean it looked scripted. The champ folded, not because he quit, but because his body had no choice. Silence swallowed the arena. The kind of silence that only arrives when greatness confirms itself. The referee jumped in, but it didn't matter. Topuria had already turned away. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't surprised. He'd been here in his mind 1,000 times. This was just the final stamp on a journey that had always been his. The belt was strapped around him, but it felt redundant. He didn't need it to prove anything. The division already belonged to him. Opponents sat at home watching, eyes hollow. Coaches shook their heads. The UFC? They had their monster now. But monsters don't sell dreams. They end them. And Ilia Topuria had just rewritten everything. From underdog to uncrowned king. From a name no one could pronounce, to the one name no one wanted to hear across the cage. They called him champion, but that word felt too small. Ilia wasn't just holding gold. He was holding the future of the sport. Post-fight, reporters scrambled for sound bites. Fans begged for photos. But Topuria, he just stood there, still, focused, untouched. Not because the battle hadn't pushed him, but because his war wasn't over. One belt wasn't the endgame. It was the beginning of domination. Legacy isn't built on moments. It's built on eras. And Ilia wasn't interested in sharing his. New contenders circled, trying to hype their names, but none of them looked ready. Because once you've dethroned a king with such brutal clarity, the rest of the kingdom doesn't stand a chance. He didn't just beat the best, he made the best look average. And now the world began to ask the question no one had dared before. Can anyone stop him? Because if not, we're not just watching a champion rise. We're watching a dynasty awaken. And deep inside, every featherweight knew this wasn't a reign. It was a reign of terror. History will remember Ilia Topuria not as a chapter, but as a shift. A turning point where the old guard fell and something colder, smarter, and more violent took its place. His rise wasn't a Cinderella story, it was a conquest. Calculated, ruthless, inevitable. While others played the game, Ilia rewrote the rules. No shortcuts, no gimmicks, just destruction, discipline, and destiny colliding in real time. He didn't talk his way to the top. He carved his path with fists and fury. In a sport fueled by hype, he became something rarer, a truth, unavoidable, unshakable, unstoppable. And now his name echoes not just through highlight reels, but through the hearts of every fighter who dreams of gold. Because to wear that belt now means more than talent. It means surviving Topuria. And as his reign begins, the message is clear. This isn't just a new era. It's a new order, forged in silence, ruled by fear, written by a man who doesn't chase greatness. He is greatness. And the world? It can either bow or break.